Welcome back to the Paddle Pursuit. We're back here in the $10 million studio. I'm here with my wife. So if you watched the first episode, you'll know I was making jokes, and we've made it. Married, together, haven't divorced. We're back here in the studio. We figured 15 episodes is pretty good, and this will be like a mid-season break where we get to do an episode together to kind of recap some of the previous episodes, talk about some highlights, the experience of having the Paddle Pursuit in existence, as well as talk about some questions and things that we've received in the community and answer those directly as we kind of go forward. So, Christina Norman, what's it like being part of the Norman clan?
I still have a couple more days before I can actually go and change it.
Christina is so obsessed with it takes 30 days, and she's like telling everybody, oh man, it takes 30 days before you can change your name. On Facebook, you can change your name to whatever you want, whenever you want.
Yeah, but my login on everything hasn't changed yet because my name hasn't actually officially changed yet. So on like Paddle Guru, I'm still Christina Gonzalez. When I sign up for the Wild Hog, I don't know if they're going to ask me for my ID, which still says Christina Gonzalez. So I signed up as, my old name. So I had to, walk up yesterday to the name Gonzalez and, soon it'll be fixed, but.
So for anybody that's debating on getting married, these are some of the logistical hurdles that go into it, right? I was able to change my name instantaneously. It was no big deal. It's just Robert Norman. All right, so podcast review. So Christina is an avid listener and watcher of the Paddle Pursuit podcast. I do them. I might watch them for editing purposes, but for the most part, it's kind of a whirlwind of experiencing them. So, Christina, let's talk about the Paddle Pursuit podcast.
It's been a lot of fun. I like listening to different people's opinions on different things. I think that the one unanimous thing is everybody misses shark bite. And of course, every time it's mentioned, I hear we got to get Rob on. So, Rob, when are you coming on?
Oh man. Okay, so freaking Rob has messaged me. Okay, so this is we're doing this episode Sunday. It's going to come out Monday, right? So there's no delay on this. So Rob wants to do a Hot Ones with the pugs. He wants to make it a big thing, right? So I don't know, like episode 50 is going to be with Rob, and it's going to be this like extravaganza. We're going to have a paid cameraman. We're going to have a post-edit crew. Catman is going to be hiding under the bed because he's scared of other animals and people.
I think that you should take this on the road with him and just make like a road trip pug extravaganza.
I don't know if I have the skill set to take this anywhere outside of the $10 million studio. Even when we film it, oh my gosh, is he just going to sit here the whole time? We have
if
the cat.
That's what he likes.
We have the cat on the table, and he's bugging us because he knows we're busy and doing stuff. So we have the cat on the table. So yeah, Rob M being on the show, talking about the shark bite. We're going to segue and talk about a race that I believe has taken up the mantle of that, but we'll get into that after talking about the Paddle Pursuit a little more. So are there any other notable things from the Paddle Pursuit?
I mean, Joel was really cool. Like, we had him over at our house, and like it was just so nice meeting him because like, outside of what we saw from Chattajack, like I didn't know really who he was, what he was like, because like, most of the time you would expect if something like that happens to you at your race, like you might not want to even talk about it publicly, or you might not want to go back to that race, or you might just like, if you do want to talk about it publicly, it might be just to like talk smack about other people, or like he was just really nice, calm, collective about the whole thing. Super cool guy. I was glad to have met him. Chili Billy, really cool. Like he's just such an eloquent speaker that it's like, when he mentions about creative writing, it's like, of course, that makes so much sense. Like just listening to him talk, of course he, does creative writing. I did like Caitlin's episode was really nice for like club culture. Like something that stuck out to me was like, let them be wrong, like give everybody the opportunity to try something. And if it doesn't work out, like who cares? Like it's not like a high stakes thing every time. Like just let somebody try to take the reins. And if it's not for them, like that's how you figure out whether something is for them, is give them the opportunity to try. So I think that was really cool for club culture. Of course, like having Amy on, like all of us ladies look really up to Amy because she sets the bar so high on like what a lady can do out there. So like every person you've had on there, of course, Scott like knows everything about every boat out there. So that's always fun listening to him talk about like all of his knowledge that he can just pull out of the woodworks. Theo, like it's nice knowing his background because like I've talked to him a lot at races and stuff, but like, you don't always have the opportunity to be like, so tell me how you started and what you've done and all of that. And of course, episode 1, Joe, like Chad Jack winner, that's always cool.
Episode 2.
My bad, 2. But first guest on the show. So I think like just everybody you've had on here, it's been like really interesting. Everybody's a little bit different, just having different crafts on here, different opinions. Like we're all people that bump into each other at paddle races, and like kind of knowing a little bit about people, it kind of opens you up to like just starting conversation with people, because if you're going to bump into them, you might as well be friends with them, right?
So you guys can all immediately tell that Christina, rapid fire, every episode, one fun fact about the person, she's a huge fan, right? And there's a lot of people where it's a great icebreaker where they come up to me and they're like, I love your podcast. And I'm like, oh, great. Where are you from? Alberta, Canada. And it's just like, oh my gosh. So the reach of the show itself on YouTube, we have 2, 3, some of the episodes that are popular are 500. Then on Spotify, it matches that. And on Apple, it matches that, right? So some of these episodes that are super popular have like 1,500 listens. And the paddling community, especially in North America, like 1,500 people is a big chunk out of the community. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of people that listen to it. And I kind of forget that until I go somewhere and like people bring it up and they're from very afar. Because in my mind, this is still like a Central Florida thing, right? But in reality, like it has spread all over the U.S., which is really cool. Those are all really good points. And
I didn't forget about you, Justin. Cool episode too. Yeah, like so the gear, yeah.
I was gonna joke that she didn't name all 15 people in rapid fire. So like, if she didn't name you, don't feel offended, right?
Yeah, if you give me a couple more minutes, I'd remember every single one of you guys. Like I promise.
And every episode's real memorable. And I don't know if we mentioned this in the first episode, but as this has been progressing, right? One of the big showcases is trying to look at people in the community that you don't have to be good at paddling necessarily, right? So you don't have to be like a race winner or reach some mystical level of prestige. Like you win a race and the sky opens up and this entity like knights you. Like you are now good enough to speak publicly about paddling, right? And I feel like a lot of people wait for that moment to befall them, right? Like if I just win this race, I'll get popular enough. And that's not what the community's about. That's not what paddling's about. There's hundreds of people who do it for exercise, for personal progress, to enjoy the atmosphere of the community and the culture. And I like spotlighting those people. I feel that that is way more interesting. Nothing against pro racers, right? Because like I have formatted my life to be closer to that, type of training schedule where it's like step 1, quit your job. Automatically 99.9% of listeners automatically cannot connect with you anymore because they're never going to reach that point where it's like, oh, I'm going to quit my job to do this. Mm-hmm. Like paddling is so niche, like you don't even have that opportunity, right? Then it's like, yeah, then I train 3 times a day and I've given up everything for this idea. And in the community, like we kind of get what a professional is. So having 15 professionals on, there's not too much enticing there, right? Versus somebody that's like, oh, I was in a major car accident and I have actual brain damage and I am learning to go through my motor functions again and I'm paddling at a very high level. That's awesome. Like that's a very cool thing. And so those are some of the things that intrigue me personally to reach out to people and to talk to them outside of my inner friend group so far.
And speaking of, more on the professional level, you haven't released it yet. So like you just kind of told me a little bit about what your your episode with Jesse is going to be like. And I think that one's, with Jesse and then like Joe, like I think a lot of people, I can hear it because like I'm, just walking around being a normie and I can hear them be like, oh yeah, that's Jesse. That's like that really good paddler. But like they don't go up to him like and treat him like a human and try to like start a conversation like they might with me or you, because everybody knows you from like, drunk cooking, Facebook, podcast, all of that stuff. But like, Jesse's a really cool human too. And like, it's nice to be able to talk to him about some stuff. And like, I think that, just putting people like back on the radar as people, like that's cool too.
Yeah, so the next episode is Jesse Lischuk, which is probably the number one most requested video that we've had. And even that one, like Jesse is super humble, super chill, right? And there are many racers that get not even near his skill level and their heads overinflate, right? And it's just not fun to talk to him, right? And so with him, like you said, I knew like this guy is awesome and he's going to be great to showcase. We're doing all this to tease the next episode, by the way, because I can release that video now, but instead you're stuck talking to us. You have to listen to us for one more week and we get to hype up Jesse Lischuk's episode, which is very informative, very cool, and ultimately humanizes him, right? Again, at the Skyway Bridge Challenge, which we're about to talk about, people were in the shadows. Oh, man, he's so cool. And it's like, in my brain, it's like, man, go up and talk to him because he will talk your ear off if you open up that door, right? So I'm hoping that the podcast kind of sets that precedence where people reach out to him in person, send him an email, reach out to him on Facebook. Super cool guy. And again, Jesse, thank you so much for coming on the show. So let's transition. So we talked about the paddle pursuits. Now we're looking at current events. There is an opportunity for these podcasts because it only takes us an hour before. So something can happen race day on a Saturday. We can talk about it Sunday. The episode goes out Monday, right? So we can talk about either current events in the paddling world or drama or whatever is going on, right? So this is kind of our first take on that because we're going to talk about the shark bite's potential heir apparent. And we got the Wild Hog. We got our Wild Hog shirts on. If you're in podcast land, you're just going to have to imagine the coolest shirt in the world with two hogs on it. Yeah. And we got two wild hogs here talking into some microphones. So, current events. So, Skyway was that last week?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. It felt like it was like an eternity ago, right? So, the shark bite. Theo put it best on his podcast. A season kickoff in a tropical location with a manageable race distance. Shark bite is on the north side in Dunedin. The new Skyway Bridge Challenge race, which is OC6 on Saturday, small boat races on Sunday, same format as the shark bite, is on Fort DeSoto, which is on the same coastline, and it's like 20 miles south, maybe 30, and it is very similar, potentially, right, where you have the same vibe. It's tropical and lush, and it's cool. It's the same part of Florida for the most part. The course is semi-technical, shallow waters, tide, wind, some swells, and it hit every mark. When I raced Saturday in the OC6 and then Sunday on OC1, and it was like, this is it. Like this is what we've been clamoring for on the podcast. Like we want another one of these, and this thing has just appeared.
Yeah, like it's nice that it's earlier on in the season. Like I love Clearwater, of course, but normally that one's a little bit close to Chattajack, so it's like it doesn't have enough time to be its own thing to where you're like, oh, I'm looking so forward to Clearwater. It like a little bit, it gets overshadowed by the fact that you've been training so much for Chattajack. Well, most of us that do Chattajack, that's like what we train for months on end. So that's like what's at the forefront of our mind.
Yeah, and having two of them, right? Where you have the OC6 race. An OC6 spring race has been missing in the schedule, like because we have a bunch in Florida that are in the fall, right? So like August with the Lanakia Classic, which I need to talk about more. And then we have September, October for the Clearwater, and then November for the Nish Pombo, right? So it's 3, and then we don't have anything else going on in the spring. So it hits an empty mark where something used to be years ago, and now taking that over.
The other thing is like it kind of gives you like a chance at redemption later on. Like if you didn't do so well at the Skyway challenge, it gives you motivation to like, oh, I have to get better before Clearwater, or I have to get better before Nish, or I have to get better, like, you know, for the later on OC6 and small boat races.
Yep. And one of the nice things with like some of these higher profile events, and it's their inaugural year and they still had a huge turnout, is there's a lot of racers that don't race all the time. They only go to these like high profile races. And so like Christina and I, dude, we will race on any creek on any weekend with anybody. And dude, we'll like, if it's got to be self-time, whatever, I will race anytime. So your opportunity to race me is present. If you want to drive, like it's here all the time.
Wednesday nights, Monday nights,
come to the
Tuesday
lake,
morning, Thursday morning.
Anytime. Like you pick a landmark and the first one there wins, right? But there's a lot of racers, especially in the ladies division, where it's like you see those names on the results and it's like this person literally races once or twice a year at very high profile races. And so it's your opportunity to kind of sharpen the sword against these competitors that you won't see again until the next high profile race, because they just won't go out and do a little, you know, like small end race, right?
Yeah.
And that's the draw and allure of having the shark bite, was the pull and the drive, you know, for people. And now having something to replace that is really cool. So speaking on behalf of Rob, so with the shark bite, there's a lot of logistical hurdles with the state park, the county, the U.S. Coast Guard, liability, and the list goes on, right? And the shark bite got bigger and bigger, and it just became a huge undertaking, right? And with Skyway, there are a few things in the logistical makeup of it that are much more sustainable long-term. It is a county park, much easier to rent out, much bigger areas to rent without impacting the flow of the park on the weekends. I still think April is like an off time for them, so it's not like summertime when there's a lot of people present. So there's a lot of things that are built into it that makes it seem like it's feasible for the long term. It's still a huge undertaking, but it doesn't become impossible, right? And I feel like that's where Shark Bite ended up hitting the wall, where it was like, it takes a team of people and none of them are getting paid, right? Like nobody's making enough money to justify the amount of sink of time that goes into it. So again, really happy with the Skyway. Thought it was very well run. We'll talk about the drafting another time though, right?
Wait, my drafting?
No.
Aw.
Drafting out of class. I'm just kidding. I don't care. All right. So next up, speaking of well-run events, let's talk about the Wild Hog. So the paddle pursuit is cool so far because most people on here don't know what the Wild Hog is. And we just did it. We are obsessed with this race. And I don't know if paddle race is the right way to put it, because it's kind of like an obstacle course race, but you happen to be in 6 inches of water. So
like there's a paddle vessel involved.
That's right. So you're not it's slower to run than having some sort of floating object to be in, right? And so, Christina, take it away on describing the Wild Hog, where it's at, what is the race, and the formatting.
Okay, so it's on this river. If you use the term a little bit loosely, it's a river.
It's a creek.
It's basically a creek,
but it's a creek.
It's called the Wakasasa River, and it is in Bronson, Florida, which is in Levy County, which has a low population. And there is, as you're paddling down the creek/river, if you look to the right and you see people standing over there, they're probably on their hunting property. Like it is not, residential area. It is hunting property.
What do they hunt out there?
I'm guessing hogs.
They hunt hog. They got the hog.
And they also have the trees that they cut down for the cabbage, the swamp cabbage. That's part of like the culture there. It's. I don't think there's a lot of people that go down this creek outside of race day unless they are preparing to go down this creek for race day. I would say 90% of the participants are either in something that is plastic or aluminum, both of which are very heavy. So they have everybody line up, and they start with some of the classes that are going to take a little bit longer, like the youth class. So, like, 2 kids in a canoe, both under 18, might not finish this as fast as somebody who knows how to paddle and get over objects like a monkey. So it starts off with some of the slower classes and then ends with some of the faster classes. And so you end up having to either be passed or pass a lot of people. And while you are passing people, you are also going under or over or around or into logs. During the first half of the race, that's where you are going over and under a lot of logs. So that's where a lot of like the pileups happen, is in the first half of the race. Then the second half of the race, there's less logs involved, but there is also like limestone everywhere. So it's kind of nice that you don't have to get out of the boat so much, because it's, there's limestone along the edge. There's limestone underneath your feet. So, you definitely want to bring something that can withstand a lot of hits, a lot of scrapes. But it's just a ton of fun. Most of the participants, like, this is the one paddle race they do the entire year. And it's like more of an obstacle course than anything. And if you can get over the obstacles, it doesn't really matter if you cannot paddle fast.
Yeah, and it's a really cool. So it's been going on like 46 years, or
47, 47th annual year.
47 years, and at one point, 99% of people, they're just locals, right? And they're doing this to raise money for their special education foundation that they have in Levy County, and so it's all for charity. And so the Maynard family does a great job on raising these funds for these people. And this race is an offshoot of that. And over time, it has begun to slowly evolve into its, a competitive race category. So one of the things, it is so well run. Like, it is so hard to overstate how well these people run this race. Like, we pay $100 or $200 per person to go to some of these major profile races, and they can't get the timing right. This is $30 with what did we calculate? Like 250 participants?
Yeah.
250 participants. When they do the start, it is 2 at a time. And they don't just go every minute. They go at some random interval. It could be 15 seconds. It could be 45 seconds, because they're waiting on participants to get in the water.
So the lagoon that you like get into your canoe at, you can maybe fit like 6 canoes in there at a time. So they just grab 2 people that are ready, that are next in line, and say, go.
And so each boat has numbers on it, and they plug in the 2 starting time numbers into their software, right? And then they go. Then the next 2 go. And the next 2 go. And we have classifications, but you can go out of class, right? Like, you can cut the line, or you can go further back, right? It's taboo to do that, obviously. Or
if there's like an odd number, like the very last experienced men's class was...
They just send 1.
No, it was Kevin Olson and Rod Price, and I was the first one in paddleboard, so I started with them.
And that's what I mean,
but it doesn't
right?
matter.
Yeah, you could have a paddleboard and grandma on a water bike, right? Like whatever, but it's just 2 at a time, and it's random. So it's not like 1 and 2 must go. It's not 3 and 4 must go. It's random, and they do it on the fly. And the moment you finish the race, you walk off the water, and there's a TV. You walk over to the TV, and it will tell you your class, your placing, and your exact time. And it is accurate to the second, right? And when you finish, you're going to finish nowhere near the other dude you started with. So you end up with 75 or 80 unique heats, and they have instantaneous results live. $30 in Levy County. Drive through US 19 as you're going towards the Panhandle or something, right? Levy County. there is so much to be learned on events that have one heat or two heats or three heats. Even with a large population, it is almost inexcusable to goof up these times when you have this race. And these people, they finish fast. Again, there's like 200 participants, rapid fire, flying over this finish line, and they're still being able to get that person, link them up to their unique start time, and have it accurate instantly, right? And I think that's one of the nicest things about it is that shows the amount of care and attention to detail. Again, 99% of people are not competitive, but they give you like this outlet of instant gratification as if you were like an elite racer. Like all you care about is time. It shows it. Half the people don't give a crap about their time. It's just us that nerds out about it. We jump up and we're like, oh man, I'm first in my class and I'm first overall the other times. It tells you, oh, I'm 21st out of everybody. And it gives you that information instantly. And they don't have to do that, but it adds to the allure. And now you have people coming from, Trey Reeves came down from like Alabama. People are coming from the Panhandle, Mike Malone. Sally wasn't here this year. We had a racer from Illinois, Yank on my boat. But all these people are coming out of state to enjoy this because it is so well done. And ultimately, it's so unique in nature.
And it's like when it comes to bang for your buck, like we get a race t-shirt, they feed you afterwards. Like even just the process of setting up, like you put your boats down there, you drive down to the finish line and they have a little van shuttle you up there. Like it just, there's so much that gets put together for this race. At the finish line, they normally have a petting zoo. There was bouncy houses. There was that little trolley thing that they had like pulling around kids. Just like, you know, the amount of entertainment that you get for $30 is absolutely insane.
It is. And the race is really cool. So it's one of those events where if you're watching this right now, you can go to YouTube, Wild Hog Canoe Race 2024, and I have the GoPro on my forehead. It's edited and it's up, so you can watch it and get a feel for what we're talking about. And it's one of those events that you have to do it once just to figure out, like, even when you watch the video, it is so hard to understate. And my video is totally like false advertisement because it's like, oh, that looks simple until you get to like a log. And then it's like, how do I get out? How do I approach this log? How do I pull my boat over? When do I get back into it? What do I do about these 6 people that are around me? Are they nice? Are they mean? Can I go through them? Are they in my way? So there's all of these decisions that you have to make, and you don't understand what you're getting into until you live it. And then it becomes an arms race. The first time I did it, my boat was terrible. The second time I did it, I had a better equipment. And the third time I did it, I've got it optimized now, right? Where I have a very specific craft and I'm looking to do very specific things with it based on memory. Like I want this item to do this thing. And so now running the course, I'm able to use that information to my advantage. And it's tough to beat me unless you have a better craft, a better strategy, and can execute monkeying over these logs and stuff and going through these people and so on, right? So that's one of the things that draws me to it so much is all of that planning. Like the idea of like, if you're good at it, it's not about being a good paddler. It's not about being a good athlete. It's about a combination of all these things as well as a game plan that is tight knit.
Because when you think about it, like out of an 8-mile race, let's say you can paddle 4 miles an hour and the person behind you can paddle at 3 miles an hour while you're paddling. That's a difference of 5 minutes every mile. But if you take an extra minute on every log, that adds up so fast. It's not even funny because there's so many logs that it's like getting around the logs quickly adds up. Like you end up, you know, going through the obstacle course quickly, then it doesn't really matter how fast you can paddle. Unless you've got somebody next to you that can get through the obstacle course just as quickly as you are, then you have to be the better paddler. But for the most part, like, you know, if you can make up minutes on every log, doesn't matter.
And that's one of the fun things is this race 46 years. You got to think like some of these kids out here, their grandparents did it. Their parents do it. They do it. And ultimately, if it keeps going, their kids are going to do it, right? So it's like this like family thing. And none of them, they don't care about paddle racing. But god dang, they are so good at this. That was one of my biggest takeaways the first couple of years I did it was people struggle to get to the obstacle and then they ace the obstacle. And then I see some of my fellow racers who are killing it log to log. And then they're just like, they approach a Rubik's Cube and they have no idea. And you got these two teenagers that just freaking in synchronization up and over and pulling and boom, boom, boom. And then you got the two expert paddlers that are looking at each other like, who gets out first? When do I get out? Do I get out now?
I'm not used to my boat touching something else on the race course.
Exactly. Like, I just slammed into this person. Do I have to like give them my insurance information, right? And it's a totally different vibe. And like with ocean racing, especially, we're racing carbon boats. They're very fragile. They're very expensive. There is an etiquette to it, right? And it is not an unspoken one. It is a spoken etiquette, like, do not touch my boat. Versus with this, it's demolition derby. Jason Larkin starts with me. If you watch the video, I told him, I'm going to run into you as hard as I can. He's like, oh, yeah, okay, Rob. And we get on the start line, and I ram right into it. And that's the hog, right? Like, that's the experience that you're trying to go for. It's not malicious to hurt the person, but it is a contact racing environment. If you go into it with something that's fragile, you are not in the right headspace for what you're about to get into. You need something that can take a shotgun blast, a hammer strike, being attacked by, alligators, everything, right? And it's still got to float and it's still got to carry you.
Yeah, it's definitely the most unique paddle race that I've been to. Like, it would be interesting to put it out there when we put it out there. Like, does somebody else have a similar race in their area that's like, across the country?
And it's funny because people that haven't done the Wild Hog are like, oh yeah, like in my state, we got down trees. Dude, you got no idea. So what makes it special is Levy County, we've alluded to, is very low population. And there is nothing out here. There is no houses. There's no infrastructure. There's hunting property. So when a tree falls, there is no governing body that needs to clear it. There is no U.S. Coast Guard waterways. There is no Florida Wildlife Control access, nothing, right? So these trees fall and they'll sit there until they rot out, right? So you might have a tree fall. One of the major logs has been there every year I've done it. I'm assuming it's just been there forever. And so it accumulates. And the organizers will go through and chainsaw some of them to make them semi-accessible. Because there's a lot of times the trees fall and the branches are so thick, you literally can't get through. So they trim it up a little bit, but they don't remove it. Like, there's always obstructions. So it's not a joke that there are dozens and dozens of logs, and we're just thinking the ones you have to go over. But think about the ones you bump that are underwater, right?
Yeah.
And so there are so many. So a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I've done a 10-mile race and we had to go over 3 logs. Like, dude, bless your heart. You're going to go 800 meters and go over 8 logs, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have a vessel that's for it, your race is over. You're stuck. You're now on land walking, right? And people are flying by.
Yeah, like there's definitely a couple instances where, like, if you get in the water to get your boat over something, the next log is so close that you have to think about, do I even bother getting back in my boat, or do I just walk over there and throw it over the next log?
And I want to point out that when you're racing for first overall, you get back in the boat because it's always faster in the boat than walking. So jump back on your vessel, Christina.
I'm not going to beat you for first overall in my paddleboard, whether I do everything perfectly or not.
So Christina won the stand-up paddleboards, which is an open, so you're racing guys. And she beat this guy by 59 seconds. And you know where all those seconds come from? It comes from jumping back on your board when you get to the log. Don't be lazy. Don't trudge through the mud. You got to get back on that thing. And that's what makes it fun. It's not a biathlon. You're not running. You got to get on the board. You got to use the paddlecraft.
Yeah. Next year.
So, Levy County, we have the low population, the trees fall, the water levels. That's the other X factor I wanted to touch on. So, the water levels on this are based on current rainfall. So for this part of Florida, we are at a 4-month high for rain, but it hasn't rained in the last 14 days. So the water levels have steadily dropped. This river goes into the Gulf of Mexico. And so on paper, the water levels should be very high, but it's actually very low. There was one year, the first year that I did it, we scouted it out on a Wednesday. It rained all day Friday. It rained all morning Saturday, deluge rain. And then it clears up and we go out there and race. And it was I could not recognize anything from Wednesday. The water levels had gone up like 4 or 5 feet. When we paddled, you're like in a ravine, right? Like you look up the cliffs. It was so high, there was no cliff. Like you're literally like you go over a log and you look over and you're like, oh, I can just run on land because you're like 5 feet higher. This year, you get to a log and you look up and you're like, is it worth it to climb up 4 feet on that hill and run around, right? And I think that's my favorite part about it is there's this element of unknown. Even if you scout it Friday, it can rain or it cannot rain, and it will change that river a little bit for the next day. And so year to year, it's always a little different.
Yeah, so like logs where it's just high enough that you can duck under. If it rains, then all of a sudden you have to go over that one. There's going to be, ones where you're prepared to like have to, climb on top of it and go over it. And then the water is actually at that level. So you just got to do a little scooch and you're over. Like everything changes so much on the race course with a little bit of extra water.
And it also changes how the paddle crafts perform and the amount of speed. The higher the water, there's a real flow, right? But then on low water years, there's nothing. Last year when I did it on the surf ski, I was under 2 hours, barely, right? Like 1 hour and 53 minutes, and the clear winner. The year before, much higher water, 1 hour and 55 minutes on a stand-up paddleboard, which is much slower, right? And I was like 7th overall or something. So the water levels influence the amount of speed that you're going to get, but it also makes paddlecrafts more or less viable as well, right? A paddleboard is great at going under some of these logs, but the water levels are too high. Paddleboard's got to scooch over the top. Now you've negated some of your benefit. So a partially low water year is good, but if the water is too low, your paddle hits the bottom. Now you're in this other conundrum.
Yeah.
So trying to balance out, there's a potential different craft for each water levels. And all of this that we're talking about, this is what makes it interesting. There's a level of planning and skill that goes into this river. And like I said, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's one of the largest paddle races in all of Florida by a large margin. And there's so much technical prowess that goes into it. And it kind of deconstructs what we know about paddle racing in general. I love it. I love going out there and just being a barbarian for a little bit.
It kind of reminds me of Danny Smith's episode where it's like some of the races where it's like paddle and 5K or sup and run. Yeah. That has a lot more participation than just your traditional paddle race because you're getting in like more people that aren't like, oh, I race 100% of the time. Like, oh no, I do 5Ks, like running all the time, and I'm just going to get on this paddleboard because it's part of it.
And that's one of the tough parts with this race is it's so well run, but if you tried to replicate it, I can't even start on another body of water that would be, because if it's any more treacherous, you can't traverse it, right? But if it's any more accessible, it's not quite as fun, right?
Yeah,
it's just
and it's got to be like shallow enough that somebody can stand in the water to get their canoe over something. Because if you've got a downed log and then you get out of your boat and it's above your head, then what
drown.
do you do?
Yeah, exactly. Like you really can't drown out here because there's only like one section where the water might go over your head, and you're likely not interacting with that. You're going over the log instead. So it's an interesting balance to make it so unique, right? So if you're listening and you're thinking, man, that sounds awesome. If you need more information, please reach out. If you need a vessel, I'm telling you, you go on Craigslist, you got $300 in hand. You can find something to go out there. I've been looking around Florida. They got plastic surf skis in different brands and stuff, like Cobra Eliminator. You can get it for like $200. And it's like, this thing can win that race.
Yeah.
And so don't think that there's a huge barrier to it. You're just looking for some plastic boat. If it has a rudder, great. If not, it's not mandatory. Like you can still, it's not that much navigation that does go on.
Yeah, so, not having a rudder means there's one less thing that can fail you out there.
Yeah, and my rudder is bent to hell, right? Because I didn't research. It's not attached on correctly, so the whole post is now like yanked up. It didn't fail, but it was getting mighty close to paddle steering. So talking about the Wild Hog, treacherous races, potentially not making it. Let's talk about some close calls. So I had been asking around about close calls. That was something that Scott actually pitched after our episode together. And he was saying, hey, you should get some of these stories and recap them. And so I asked in the community a few times, and I didn't get much with people contacting me. And so that means that we're just going to talk about our close calls, right? So hopefully that's an icebreaker.
Sorry, you're stuck with us. If you want to hear other people's close calls, make them write in.
That's right. Yeah. So if you're listening, they can be anonymous. It's not a big deal. Like, I'm not going to dox you or something like this fool did this dumb thing, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, we all make mistakes. And the idea is that if we can learn from them, we can be better for the future and obviously save lives, right? So which one do we want to start with, yours or mine?
I mean, mine wasn't really like a close call per se, but it was far from my best race because I fell out of the boat multiple times.
All right, so tell us about one of the other coolest races, which we have the mug here. So if you're in podcast land, imagine the coolest Moscow Mule copper mug. And this is the final year of the Key West, by the way, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about this pre-mortem, but it'll soon be a post-mortem thing if you listen to this episode in the far future. So tell us about your first ocean race and going around the rock, going around Key West.
Yeah, so I mean, I had started surf ski late, very late in 2019, and then COVID happened, so we weren't doing a whole lot of traveling. I did not have much of a chance to paddle in actual ocean. I don't know if we even had gone to Clearwater to practice at that point. I don't even think we had. So it was my first experience in the ocean.
We went to the Atlantic before you did Key West.
Okay, whatever. But
you're welcome. I would not send you out there ill prepared.
Okay, well, I went in the V10 Sport, so it's a pretty stable boat for me at this point, now. But back then, I was comfortable, but it was still bordering on I don't want to go any more narrow than this, even on flat water. So Key West was a little bit more choppy than flat water. I did mostly fine until we got back around the seawall. And then I had gotten a little bit too close to the seawall, so the reverberation got me. So I flipped out of the kayak once. I got back in, and then I was not smart and got away from the seawall. I just kept paddling because I was like, well, I want to go that way. So then I flipped the second time, and I got back in. My leash is wrapped around the boat like crazy. So I'm I had to untangle my leash, put my leash back on. Then I started paddling. I'm hearing this weird sound. I look behind me. My water's dragging, my little water bag thing was dragging in the water. So I reach around to fix it without going further from the seawall. So that's when I flipped the third time. And then I was just kind of okay, well, I fixed everything before I got back into the boat that time. And then I did end up finishing, I survived, and, I didn't have to swim to shore or anything like that, but I was not as prepared as I would have liked to have been, and I hadn't really figured out the whole, how to not get the leash wrapped around your boat before getting back into it.
Yeah, the balancing equipment is the thing that we don't think about because, you don't want to practice flustering yourself, right? So it's hard to go out on a calm body of water and be like, let me get my leash and my water pack and friggin' wrap it around my neck when I fall out. Nobody wants to do that, but it is a moment that surprises you when it does, right? So you don't realize how well you have to secure down your hydration bladder, how well you have to hook up the leash, how you have to remount and all these things until it's wrapped around you, right? And guess what? You just fell. You didn't want to fall. It's turbulent conditions. And you have one more or two more barriers there. And this is a common thing that happens to people. And it causes you to panic, right? Where it's oh, I physically can't get in the boat because the leash is wrapped the wrong way. So when I try to get in the boat, my leash is pulling me under the boat now, right? Mm-hmm. So what is the protocol on that? If you're calm, cool, and collective, if I just take my leash off, it'll wrap around to the other side and I can grab it. But if you're panicking, oh my God, it's like having an anaconda wrapped around your leg, right?
Yeah. And I mean, luckily, I wasn't in panic mode because I've done so many remounts by that point that remounting was not an issue, even in the turbulent water. And, you had told me, like, if your leash ever gets wrapped around your boat, just make sure you're 100% stable, have your feet in the water, and then just pull it off and then put it on real quick. So, like, I knew what I was doing, but the part that was, like, flustering me was, like, oh, I've got 2 competitors in front of me. I want to do this fast. And that's when things start getting messy, is, like, anytime you're flustered and you don't just do it right the first time, that's when it's like, okay, well, now you did it wrong twice and you're going to have to do it right the second time.
Yep. And that's it forces you, like, you have to do it flawlessly, or it beats you up and it makes you do it again. And we're kind of like inland paddlers here, right? Like, the Gulf of Mexico is close, but the Gulf of Mexico for our area is not the Gulf of Mexico of Tampa. It is not the Gulf of Mexico of Naples. It is not the Atlantic Ocean anywhere, right? And so making the commitment to drive over is like a 5-hour round trip to get to like Cocoa Beach or, Daytona. And you got there and guess what? Oh no, it's only 1 mile an hour winds and it's like the lake, right? And so making that jump to try and get used to turbulent conditions that a race site presents that you are not able to practice it, right? So like Key West, we don't live in Key West. We're 8 hours away from Key West. So we can't just go out and practice Key West. And that's one of the things with like Key West that makes it cool. Nobody that races it like lives there. Everybody comes from far away. Some people are fortunate enough to live on the Atlantic and get a taste of that. Some people are not, right? They're coming from, the Midwest. And so you go out there and those conditions kind of surprise you because our brains are really good at like, I'm very good and these conditions are not as big as I think they are, until you get out there and it flips the script where this is way bigger than I thought and I am ill prepared.
Yeah.
And this is where it starts to overwhelm you, but you've made the commitment of flying down, driving down, paying the entrance fee, going out there, and you're on the start line. You're not going to back down now. Now you're 2 miles out there. And then again, these things start to arise. And this is a common pitfall, and it has happened to literally everybody, right? So that's Christina's, which is not as dramatic as mine. So Chad Seipel is at home, and he's rubbing his hands right now. And he's thinking, man, I want him to talk about that freaking paddle again, right? So we do a downwinder in the Gulf of Mexico. I guess it's been like 3 years ago. I think it was 21 went out there. And one of the things with a downwinder, if you're not familiar, is the wind pushes you in a direction. And sometimes where you need to end is slightly to the side, right? So I was out there obsessed with, I want to go 10 miles an hour for 10 miles so bad, right? And so at about the halfway mark, if I deviate my line to get to Dunedin, to get out of the water, I'm not surfing the waves as best I could, right? So I'm thinking, I'll just go 10, I'll stop, and I'll paddle sideways, right? In the side chop, no big deal, and get to Dunedin. All right, that's the game plan. Paddle, I think I ended up like 9.8 miles per hour or something. It's one of my best runs. And start paddling in the side chop, right? So going all over the place, right? And I'm surfing it, and it's at kind of a goofy angle, right? Because it's like you're trying to surf it straight to the shore, but it's taking you out to sea. And there's a moment of surfing and getting a little off balance and bracing. And the ferrule in the center of my wing blade started to like, so it was super tight, but the amount of force that I had on the paddle was very great. And I have snapped a carbon paddle in my hand before, and it sucks because it splinters, right? Like you'll cut your stuff up. And so I heard the, and I thought the paddle was going to break in my hands, right? So my initial instinct is, oh God, like I'm holding a sharp object. I got to let go. And so I let go of my paddle, and guess what? My paddle flies off, right? So it sticks to the wave behind me, and I'm going 8 miles an hour in some other direction. And then it's like, oh my God, my tool for bracing and paddling is now gone. I try back paddling. I try doing all this stuff. I fall out. I remount, and I'm sitting there, and it's like 3 to 5 foot swells periodically, right? There would be a 5-footer that would roll by, but it was mostly like 3-footers, but just enough to keep you off balance in an elite ski. And it's like, oh God, like my paddle's gone. I can't even see it, right? And it's like, well, shore is almost a quarter mile away. I have no way to propel myself with my hands. Like I try hand paddling and I end up falling out. And so this is the Robert Norman infamous swim. Luckily, I had all my safety gear. I had the leash. I had the life jacket. I had my cell phone. Like, so if I needed to call 911, I had service. I checked my Facebook messages. I couldn't type because the screen was wet, but I went through and was like looking. And I was like, okay, my phone works. And I can like double tap emergency hotline type thing. I'm like, if U.S. Coast Guard comes out here, they don't save the boat. And I'm like, I don't really want to lose this boat. And I'm calm, cool, and collective. I still have energy. I'm not panicking. I'm floating. The current is taking me to land, but the wind is blowing me to the side. But since I'm in the water, I've already, in my brain, I'm going to make it to land eventually. I had a life jacket, and I'm floating there, and I used my board as kind of like a boogie board, right? And it took me like 30 or 40 minutes of floating. U.S. Coast Guard helicopters are overhead. The boat, one of the U.S. Coast Guard guys actually found me, right? And there's spring breakers all up and down Honeymoon Island, right? And somebody had saw me go in. They come out, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. I'm just going to swim in. And they're like, okay, we're going to watch you. And that could have been instantly bad if I didn't have the leash. If I got separated from the boat, they would have found my boat and then be like, where's the guy? And that would have been, I'd be out there floating in a life jacket. If I didn't have a life jacket, I would have been on a time limit of treading water in 5-foot surf. Panic would set in, energy being sapped. I don't know if I could have swam all the way back to shore necessarily if I started freaking out, right? One of the things that I learned from that was, one, if you stay calm, life is so easy, right? I'm sitting there, calm, cool, and collective, like, man, what am I going to have for dinner tonight? This is no big deal. Like, you really can't, if you start freaking out kills you, right? Like, that's the thing where you just start sucking in water in your lungs and your body just, fulfills the destiny that you're fearing. And so the Vycobie life jacket, right? Having that, I'm floating, buoyant, no problem. I'm tethered to the boat. Even if I let go, it's still right there. And then the vessel is your boogie board. It is your personal flotation device, essentially. And in an emergency situation, if you can stick to that in under a half hour, I know in the Tampa area, they're very good about it. Somebody's going to see you in those condos. They're sitting out there with binoculars like 24/7. They're not lifeguards. They're just normal people. Just like, they love looking
just
out
nosy
there.
People.
And honestly, like, their vantage point is so good. They can see a 20-foot boat from a freaking mile away. And then they just sit there and they'll just call them like, hey, I think somebody's dying out there, right? And it's a great infrastructure and stuff. But if you don't stay with the boat, it is almost impossible to find you. But if you can stay with the 20-foot vessel, boom, they're going to helicopter immediately. And so the end of the story, so I made it to land, picked up my boat, walked it up on the sand, sat on the beach. The workers from Honeymoon Island drove up. Sir, would you like some water? Yes. I'm thirsty. And and then we strapped the boat to the top of the little golf cart, and they drove me to the parking lot, and Chad came over and rescued me, and he's like, dude, I'm so glad you didn't die. And I was like, you know what? Me too.
And some random person was like, hey, is this yours?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So the paddle, again, the current is kind of floating towards the island, and my paddle was literally recovered. And so as we're driving by, somebody came up and was like, is this yours? And I was like, oh my God. So I didn't lose the paddle, and the boat was totally unharmed. And then, of course, I lived, right? Like, that should probably be higher up on the priority list. But again, it's a situation because of the safety protocols that were in place. Even today, my brain goes to, I was able to do these things that don't really matter, right? Versus if I didn't have the safety protocols in place, it would have been a fight for my life, right? Yeah. And it goes to show, I even had a hydration pack with water, right? So if I could just sit out there and put my thing in my mouth, right, and drink if I really wanted to. And so it can't be understated, again, when you're in these conditions, like, if you have everything set up properly, it reduces the chance of disaster so much, right? And then ultimately, though, having the right headspace. Like, if you can stay in a non-panic mode, you can do anything. And the moment you panic, you can't even write your name, right? Like, it makes every simple little task so difficult. And in a life and death situation, that's not a good thing to occur.
Yeah. So, like, the step beyond that would be like, had you stuck with Chad and you dropped your paddle, you could just be like, hey, Chad, can you go get me my paddle? And then, like, it would have been a lot easier that way.
And so that's another safety net, is like, on these downwinders, you want to be in a group. And that was a rule that I broke, right? Because I was confident in my skill and my safety and all these other things that were in place that, like, it was going to be okay. And honestly, I should not have done that. Like, that's one of the other takeaways, is I should not have broke away and done what I did, right? And so chasing these metrics and times and stuff are not good, right? Signing up for races that are over your skill level, those are not good things, right? Like, so there's a lot of things that we do that are irrational in nature. And that's one of the allures of the sport in general, right? Is there's an element of danger and fear and excitement and thrill and adrenaline, right? So they both come at a cost. We've mentioned this in the past where you have more men in the sport of surf ski downwind than you do have women. And why? Because women are smarter. They do risk assessment, and it's like, okay, I can surf at 8 miles an hour for an hour, but my chances of dying have gone up dramatically, right? It's not worth it. And so they have no interest in doing it, versus guys are like stupid. Like, oh yeah, dude, I will do anything to go down this little 3-foot hill for a moment on the water. And it is exhilarating, don't get me wrong, but when you step back and look at it from like a big picture thing, it's like, why in the world would you ever want to pursue that? And like I said, there's an element of danger that makes it more fun. And guys are more likely to take the stupid step, right? And then ladies are a lot more reserved with, is this worth it, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of them conclude no, which is why we don't have the same huge turnout of, downwind lady racers.
So the biggest threat that we tend to have within our own lake, everybody's like, oh my God, there's alligators. No. Don't worry about the alligators. Worry about the fact that it is 5 o'clock and it hasn't rained yet, especially in the summer. In
Florida, the humidity and the heat, that is energy. You can feel the energy in the air, and the water starts to evaporate, and you look up and the clouds start turning black, and the humidity is now transforming into electricity, right? That is the major danger that we have out here. Is at 4:30, it could be clear blue skies, and at 4:45, your chances of getting struck by lightning have gone up 10,000%, right? Because it just appears out of nowhere. Alligators biting you, it's like winning the lottery 5 times in a row and being, turned into the king of England, right? All of that can occur before you get nipped, right? But getting struck by lightning when you're in the middle of the lake from a pop-up storm, it's not high, but it's terrifying, right? And that's one of the things is winds will pick up. Rain is going to hit you. Lightning is going to start occurring. And some of the lightning strikes will happen before the clouds start turning black, before it starts raining. So you can't use that as an indicator. You'll just hear a crack and it's like, oh my gosh. We have been fortunate where we have never, nobody in the club has ever been struck or anything like that. Florida is the lightning capital of the planet. But we have had those pop-up storms generate wind. So again, at 4:45, we set up all the boats, all the OC1s, OC2s on the hill leading to Lake Hernando. Oh yeah, practice is going to start at 5.
Well, we actually, the time that I'm thinking of, we actually had just gone out and got a couple of miles in before practice, because sometimes, one of us has to steer, so we don't get the same opportunity to paddle quite as much. So we're like, oh, let's go paddle before practice, get a couple extra miles in. So this time I had taken out the SES and you had taken out the Hurricane. Yeah. So we had just come back. We just left it on the shore waiting to see who shows up and like what we're going to take out for the night. And the winds just showed up out of nowhere. And it was like so sudden that by the time I was like, we got to go get those boats and open the door, you're like, do not go grab that boat right now.
Yeah. And so that was one of those like marriage moments where like Christina was ready to die to go get 2 of my junk boats at that point. She's like, we got to get them. And my brain's calculating, we got to take apart the Hurricane. We got to get all the stuff off. We have to unstrap, load them on the vehicle. And it's already lightning, wind, and rain. And it's picking up, right? And she's like, now I'm like, we just got to like get back in and like, we're stuck, right? So we're sitting there and it just deluged and the rain is coming in sideways, the vehicle shaking. We had the OC2s on the top and they're just picking up wind and we're caught in like a little micro storm and it was like hurricane force winds. We can't even see the water, but we saw that the boats disappeared and it was like, oh no. And so we sat there like a half hour or something. And it cleared up and it was freaking blue, no wind, totally flat, right? And we like open up the doors and we walk down and it's like, where are the boats? We had no idea. My paddle was still on the shore because I had the paddle on the boat and that was laying on the shore. So it flung 50 feet towards the water and we stood on the shore and it was like, all right, if we put 2 people in the OC2, one can get out and get in the boat. And we had some of the members from practice that were there that helped us do the search and recovery. And we found everything.
Yeah, it was like 3/4 of a mile away from shore. And like that's with the AMA attached to the OC1, it's still like catapulted out there because
it tumbled.
Yeah.
It would roll and roll. So the surf ski makes the most sense, but the hurricane literally tumbled over the AMA, and they were both upside down in the water because there's the most amount of like friction, so they flip upside down and they kind of get stuck, and they're still going upside down almost a mile. And so, I mean, they're moving really fast on the surface of the water, and it took us a while to actually find them. The seat on the hurricane, that was the hardest one. And we actually found the damn thing. It's just this little square piece of foam, and we were actually able to recover that. So we didn't lose anything. Boats were not damaged because they only hit land a few times before they hit the water, and there's nothing they can hit on the lake except like grass. And but that was one too. That was a very important lesson where if we were on the water and that had occurred, I don't know what we would have done. Like we would just be on the vessel with your head down and just let it push you, right? And you're just stuck out there in the lightning because it's not enough. If you paddle back to land, you get off your vessel, it flies off. Like you can't pick it up in hurricane wind. So
yeah, we have had a couple of people that live like over in the canals explicitly tell us like, you know, if you ever get in that situation, like you can always come hide underneath our balcony thing or whatever. Like, you know, just be safe and we don't mind.
Yep. So going in the direction of the wind, you'll eventually hit land. So that would be the thing is just go in that direction until you hit land, leave the vessel on land, and it's not going to blow away and then run under a tree or into somebody's house or something. This has only happened that violent once. Like I can't think of another one where we were out there. We've had a few where it starts raining and lightning because of a pop-up storm, but nothing that crazy. We're usually good about looking at the radar. It's okay with the future forecast, but that one it did not predict 100-mile-an-hour winds and deluge rain for 15 minutes. On
especially because like we had gone out like about an hour beforehand, and we checked the radar then, and it was fine. So within that hour, that's when things started popping up.
All right, so Christina's like, you know what? We're going to go a little over an hour. So the last thing that we're going to talk about is boat failure and going through some of the procedure on that. So that's another one where you're out doing something and your rudder breaks. Do you have a game plan on fixing your rudder? One of the downsides of a rudder is if your rudder line breaks, your rudder is now going to turn sideways. It's not going to be fixed straight. So unless you need to turn hard right for the next X amount of miles, that's not feasible to even, you might be able to get off of your waterway, but it becomes a hazard of being unable to operate your vessel. We raced at Chattajack on the fastest year ever, which is a bummer, 2021. And we're in like second place, and then the third place boat comes up next to us, and we're all sitting next to each other. And it's like, this is awesome. And I push my foot on our tandem surf ski rudder or pedals, and the rudder, it's not responding. And it's like the current is flowing at like over 2 miles an hour, and we start careening off course. We were able to make it back to land. It was turned left, thank God, right? And so land was right there. We get out, and I look, and the rudder line is broken. And I pulled the rudder line all the way through, and I wanted to cry, right? Because it's like not about the placing, but we had put in so much work. We traveled up here, and we're going to DNF because I can't operate this tandem surf ski anymore. And I had the brilliant idea, pull the two lines over the top, and there was enough line slack to tie a knot. And so we had the rudder line tied over the top of the hull to make connection. One of the problems, though, is there's too much slack. So the more you use the right pedal, that slack would start to pull, and the pedal would start to die on you. So we had to pull over, retie the knot, and over again.
Yeah, but I think part of it, I think it was a harder race for you than it was for me because when we pulled over to the side, like, I'm just, sad. I'm like, oh crap, our race is over. Like, I'm just bummed out about it. Like, I'm not thinking, how can we fix this thing and get back in the race? Whereas you were like, we're fixing this thing and we're getting back in this race. So like, as soon as we get back out there, we're paddling super hard, trying to catch back up because we had lost minutes on the side of the river, not moving at all. And so like, your adrenaline is just like up here. Whereas me, I'm like, oh, we're just not going to be able to do this race or whatever. So then, the couple of times we had to once again stop, and he's up front furiously tying knots, and like his adrenaline goes up again, and then we're paddling trying to catch back up. And then by the end of that race, like there were times where our mile splits were like literally 6 miles an hour, because when it comes to speed, somebody's adding a lot more speed than the other person, and it's normally this person. So like after all of those adrenaline dumps, you did not have energy at the end of that race, and we were just chugging along. Like that was a hard race to finish. Those last like 6 miles were torture.
Yeah, I was cooked. And one of the other things that added to it was the adrenaline dumps. And when the rudder started failing, oh man, if I just hit a power stroke on the right side, every single time this thing will go further, so we don't have to pull over and mess with the knots again, right? So there was miles early on where it's like, poof, right? Like every right side stroke was everything I had until my strength gave out. Then we had to fix the rudder, right? And so that was tough. And there's no asterisks on the Chattajack results, so you go back and look at that as like, wow, these guys suck, right? But it's a really great result looking back on, because it was a test of perseverance, because when you see our names, there is a number next to it. And for most people, it would say DNF, right? Because like, what do you do in that situation? And I wish I had thought about that scenario more, because there were ways for me to tie that so it wouldn't have lost the rudder pressure, right? But in a panic, I'm tying it in the wrong place, and I'm not, like the Stellar surf skis, they're all knots. There's knots everywhere. So when I'm losing tension, there's another knot that I can tighten to alleviate that problem, but my brain's not thinking about it. I'm not 100% in tune with how does this thing even work? I just get in it, and like it's like magic. And so that's one of the things with this story is understand your equipment. Look at it. Dismantle your equipment and redo it. And if you can't do that when it fails and dismantles by itself, if you don't have some of the skill set of understanding what this is, again, you are now in a very scary situation of life and death, right? And, oh, I'm in these simple conditions, so I didn't bring a life jacket today, and I don't have my leash, but my rudder has failed, my foot plate has fallen apart, and I can't swim a mile back to land. What do I do, right? So these are things where having some of these game plans are very important. Boats that have a little stash and stowaways to put little bungee cords and stuff. A bungee cord is another slick way of keeping your rudder straight. So even if you can't steer it, it's still locked forward, so now you can paddle steer. If it's turned 90 degrees to the left, you can't paddle steer it anymore, right? Yeah. So that's just one example with the rudder system.
And had we checked before we went out there, I have a feeling we probably could have seen a little bit of fraying, so we would have like, you know, reinforced it with rubber tubing or I don't know, something. But like those aren't things that you necessarily think of checking until something goes wrong, and then it's like, okay, before the race, before I go out there for 32 miles, I'm just going to double check that there's not any kind of like fraying here. You know, just like if you were going to go on a downwind, you want to double check that your leash, if you go like this, it doesn't crumble on you. You know what I mean? Like you're supposed to replace them pretty often and just double check that it, like, if you need it, it has to work.
Yep. And the leash one is a great one. Check your leash before you go out. I have had two where I pull on them, they just rip in half, right? And it's just from age. And it's like that, well, that saved my life, right? It wasn't the same day that I went for the long swim where I checked it, but it's just like, oh God, I have a whole bag full, right? So I just grab like, oh, this one's shiny, and you just want to make like yank on it as if it breaking would save your life. Like don't just, oh yeah, because if you fall out and it's, you know, the boat's 10 miles an hour and your body weight, there's a lot of pressure on that thing for a moment, and it's like life and death. Like you want that thing to work.
Yeah.
All right, so that's pretty much everything. We only went over a little bit. Any final thoughts or anything you want to share with the Paddle Pursuit podcast community?
Not that I can think of. I'd love to hear, you know, what else people would like to hear from us, or like guests, or if you know a guest is coming on, like it's always good to reach out and ask like something if you've got a specific question.
Yep. Any kind of input from the community makes the show better, so feel free to reach out. We're doing this for you guys. It's interesting for me, but it's always been, man, I wish there was more paddle media content, and we're trying to fill that void the best that we can. So again, your input kind of refines and makes that better over time. And we're very appreciative of the community that we do have. It's awesome, hearing all the different stories and everything. And we hope to continue this. We have a lot of different podcasts that are lined up, so we should close out the year unbroken throughout. That's kind of the goal, which will get us 52 episodes, and then I can retire a champion, right? So, all right, I believe that is everything. So thank you guys so much, and we will see you all next week when we talk to Jesse Lischuk on the podcast.